Welcome back to the workbench. For today's project I have decided to have a look at this Centerbeam flat car. I've got this one and I've got an opera window one on the way at the moment, should be hopefully with me tomorrow. I was inspired by the video I put on with the GP15-1 working on the Morristown Leary, and they were using two of these as, I believe, barrier cars while switching out some tank cars. I've had this one for a little while now, and I would say the opera window one's on its way, and I just thought this would make a nice interesting little project to weather and add some details to. This is the Walthers one. It's a fairly basic model, doesn't have any of the brake gear or the cut levers or anything like that on it, so I'm going to add some detail. I'm not going to go mad on that. I do want to add the tie down cables for the loads. This one's going to be unloaded, but it's going to have the tie down cables fitted to it in the unloaded setup. And I'll do the opera window one the same, but with a slightly different configuration of the cables. So yep, that's what we're doing today. It's probably fairly generic weathering on this. I've looked at quite a few photos and they seem to weather very much similar across the various different types. So we'll get it over to the workbench and see how we get on. Okay, so we've got the first Centerbeam on the bench, which is the TTZX1 with the open centres. Having looked at a lot of images on railpicturearchive.net, which I've got on the screen here, the weathering is, as I say, fairly generic. It's generally in the same places that receive the load on the centre spines and on the support pieces on the bottom there. So, and then in between them is where general grime and dirt collects. So my plan is to weather these up to look like hopefully worn paintwork, and then we'll add some general grime along the bottom. A lot of them have this have a line along the top here at about the same level, so I'll probably try and recreate that on both these cars, less so on this one with its openness, but with the second one with the opera windows I'll definitely try and include that. And then at the end there's general ends and the along the chassis around the trucks, general sort of road dirt, so we'll look at doing that as well. So probably my plan is I've got these sort of budget acrylics which came from a hobby shop. I think these came from Hobbycraft, or they might have come from a local art shop that shut down fairly recently. I bought a load from there, so hopefully they will do the job for the centres there. I appreciate they're a slightly cheaper version, so what their longevity will be like I'm not sure, but hopefully with a coat of varnish over the top they'll be alright. And then for the ends and the sides I shall use the sort of classic Tamiya colours. I've got a couple more which we'll mix up, probably airbrush that certainly on the ends and maybe on the trucks as well, and the undercarriage to get that grind down. So that's the plan. I'm going to mix up some of these. We'll probably Tamiya to one side at the moment. We're going to start with the cheaper craft acrylics. We'll mix some of those up in a palette. Obviously to quite a dark, I mean this is almost black, we'll look for a sort of probably a charcoal grey with a bit of brown in it to give the effect of the rust. I'll get these bits done first, see how it looks, and then look at getting probably some colour washes for the base here. And it's quite dark under there. I might just touch that with the airbrush, but we'll see how that goes when we get there. So I've got my rather messy palette of colours here, and these are from the cheap craft paints range. I'm using I've got black, I've got a burnt sienna, and also a little bit of what is described as burgundy rose. So they're the three colours I'm going to be using initially. What I want to achieve is on the stanchions at the back is where the loads rub, and that's the paint's worn off. They're generally dark with a bit of rust showing through the edges. So initially, that's the first stage. It's going to be to put the rub lines on all the raised surfaces on the back and on the board, on the deck. And then I can look at whether it's in. But initially we've got paints there, got a bit of Isopropyl Alcohol as well, just to allow a bit of movement on the paint. These I'm just going to paint direct onto as a direct paint on the surface. For the platform I'll use a wet on wet method and get a bit of paint flowing there, but for these it's much more a case of just getting the paint in blocks basically, particularly down the edges where most of the rubbing is. So initially I don't think it's going to look great. I've got a mix of so the black, brown and the burgundy rose, just so it's not, I don't want it pure black, but I do want it to be a nice dark colour. So that's how that looks. Not a lot to see initially, but once we get this on, it's going to look a lot better once it's finished. It does look a bit like it's been put on with a paintbrush at the moment, but let's darken that down a bit. I particularly want to get the dark in at the top, because that will be under shadow anyway, so I want to create the illusion of the shadow, and then, like I say, the edges are the kind of the bits where it seems to rub the most. I think my main concern with these cheap paints is their longevity. Hopefully with a bit of varnish over the top, we can protect them from fading too much. Been interesting to see. I suppose maybe I should have really gone directly with the Tamiya on these. I'm going to use the Tamiya for the decks, because that will work nicely on the wet on wet. But I'm going to run with these for now. We'll see how it turns out. Probably put a brown wash over the whole lot to weather it down a bit, but I'll do that just to pull it all together at the end hopefully. So we'll see how it looks. I might, you know, it might not need it, but so I'm not kind of weathering between the rust marks at the moment, but that'll come. And again, the cross bracing, I'll do that with the wet on wet technique once I've got this a bit further in. Making sure I've got all the there's some little holes where the straps fit in on all those upright braces, so just make sure that they've all got rust marks in them, because they would obviously wear fairly quickly, I would think. Make sure that's all dogged in. Okay, well that was the work of a very few minutes. Doesn't look great at the minute, but I'm confident that with some additional weathering that we can make this, it'll start to pull it together once I've got the wet on wet on, and we've finished off these black marks. So I might just fill in some of them a little bit more. I think I can afford to be reasonably bold on this. I think some of them perhaps looking a little bit too clean. Let's go all the way down the edge there. We'll put a bit of spotting in at the ends. In fact, we'll do a bit on these surfaces as well, so they're all affected. Oops, a bit much there, but that's fine. If I've put a bit of a lump too much on there, I'll come back to that and get a bit of IPA on there and just cut it down a bit. I'm not going to do them all because I keep it a bit of variety. I'll pop a bit in around where the writing is at the end there. Okay, so that's phase one. I'll just put some spotting at the end, and then we'll look at doing the bits on the deck. Excuse the fat fingers, I'm just going to touch in a few bits at the end just to give the effect of use. We'll run a bit down the corners, we'll get some abuse with stuff loading and unloading. Get a bit of IPA on that and just soften those edges a little bit. One thing that is pretty noticeable is that all these cross braces have gathered dirt along the tops and the bottoms. Now, I could do this with a wash, which you might argue is the better way to do it, but I'm going to put a wash on as well anyway. So I'm going to just hand paint those with a little line of paint down there, and then once I get my wash on, soften those edges. Because again, looking at the photo, it's quite a prominent layer of dirt down there. Okay. That's the initial coat on. We'll get a bit of IPA on there now. Get a bit of background dirt on as well. I'm going to mix the IPA direct on my little palette with the paints that go along. We're probably just going to use this brown with a bit of IPA mixed in it. And then I'm going to come back over the top with the brush. I've got a wider brush. Just take most of that off again. There's just enough on the brush to fill in all these panels. Soften the edges of, there we go, it's got to go. Might just run over again if I've taken a bit of paint off the uprights. But I'll probably wait until the IPA has gone off before I do too much more of that. So, have a look at this end. Just trying to take off the yellowness of the car. Yeah, we'll touch in the black or the dark on the uprights in a second. That's just taken off the edge. And again, on the original, on the photo, it's very dark under here, so I can add a little bit more. I think I can get away with a bit more brown at the top there. Put a bit of this general weathering over these stanchions as well initially. This is coming out as quite a thin wash, and with the IPA it's just flowing quite nicely and softening the back behind. Just filling in some of these marks where I think I've lightened it up slightly when I went over with the IPA, so just making sure they're dark enough again. I'm also not happy with the way I've in places I've gone in a bit with the point of the brush, which means they're brown dots rather than long scrapes. So just try and cover that up a little bit. Okay, that's good. I'll move on to doing the bolsters on the bottom, and then we'll get some washes on. One thing you might notice as I do this, and I've already done the other side, I wanted to film the process, and I did a load last night and didn't film it, so thought I'd get it done this morning on this the other side. I think on these bolsters, very important to get the edges, because these obviously what the load runs on all the time. Oh, sorry. So I'll run down all these top edges. I've done on that side, I've done the wet on wet, and I've just put a little bit again on the top. I put IPA and then washed with the colour, so the IPA takes a lot of the colour off, which is just left a very, very faint grime on there. I think without going too overboard, and then most of the weathering is on the platforms. I'm going to put an IPA. Oops! I'm going to put an IPA wash on these ends as well, which I've just realised I haven't done. A bit more IPA. Again, I think what I'll do, I'll soak them in IPA. That will probably reactivate some of the paint that's already on there. And then just with IPA and brown on the brush, push it over the whole thing, top to bottom, remembering to go up and down rather than side to side. The way the weather goes. I'll take some of that off. Yeah, I think I've got maybe a little bit too much brown on there. There we go. Run it off with a bit of IPA, and that'll have the same effect that the rain would have. Put it on top, run down to the bottom. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'll leave that now and see how it looks when it's dried. Oh, the only other thing I haven't done yet is the cables on these run from the tensioners there, and then there's obviously clips in the side where they can be clipped into when it's empty, or with partially loaded. There's 3 levels that they can clip into there, but also obviously fitting at the top here on those clip holes there, and each of those has an associated rust mark over the edge. So I haven't done the other side yet. I need to just mark those, each of those, with a little wear mark, and then we'll get the wear on there where the cable runs over the top. There's also some fixing points here, I think, each of those little nubs, so we'll make sure they're all highlighted as well. Excuse the light, the sun suddenly come out. One of the advantages of using the IPA is down this side. I think I'd put, I was a little concerned I'd got a bit heavy on the paint down the edge there, so using the IPA I've just taken that off a bit. And also, if you can see in the light, it's actually working on the effect I wanted, which is the IPA obviously takes the paint off and runs downhill, so that's now nicely creating a gathering of dirt down the bottom in the joints there. So yeah, progress working so far. This has turned into a little bit more of an epic video than I had intended, so what I'm going to do is stop here and then I'll continue in the next part 2, continue from where we've left off, and we'll get the ends done and get it finished off, or in part 2. I hope that's been of some use to anyone who's made it this far through. I've enjoyed making it, and I've enjoyed doing this bit of weathering. Looking forward to getting some of the last details on and really making this the wear on the back pop out, which hopefully will be in the next video. So there we are. So the rest of it will be in part 2. Hopefully I'll see you there.